Once again, I'd like to thank the Westin for this great meal. And right now, without further ado, we are going to introduce our speaker and our guest today. Mr. Stephen P. Cohen is the president of the Negotiation Skills Company in Pride's Crossing, Massachusetts, and is a graduate of Columbia Law School at Brandeis University and Henley Management College. Mr. Cohen spent dozens of years in politics and government, and he serves as the City of Boston's Washington lobbyist during the Nixon and Ford administrations, a job which required considerable negotiation skills. His subsequent career in commercial real estate development and management added further depth to his negotiation experience. In 2002, McGraw-Hill published Steve's book, Negotiating Skills for Managers, which is the textbook for TNSC program, the visiting business school professor of negotiation and conflict resolution in the United States and several other countries. Mr. Cohen has mediated conflicts involving such issues as partnership breakups, personal injury claims, commercial lease disputes, and land use rights. He provides coaching and negotiation training for corporate clients worldwide. Mr. Cohen continues to learn about negotiation from his wife, their two daughters, and his 2 grandsons. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Stephen P. Cohen.
Thanks, Dan. And am I on? Good, good. What Diane did not mention is that my newest book came out in October, and after the lunch, I can sell you copies if you wish. And if you don't wish, that's okay too. If you're nice, I'll autograph it. On every table, there's a little booklet called How Not to Negotiate Like a Barbarian. And we, I think, have just the right number of people. I think that they're mostly at this corner of each table, so you can pass them around. And if there aren't enough copies at one table, you can share and move things around. It's a pleasure to meet you all. And I want to thank those of you who had the time to respond to the questionnaire that we sent out before the program. It helped me enormously understand what you do, and to understand I don't think I'd like to change places with you. What you do requires selling yourself as a competent person to 2 different sides, the vendors and your clients. And of the responses that I got to the questionnaire, one that particularly stood out led me to have to tell you a story. There was an American woman having lunch in Paris quite a number of years ago, and she happened to glance up during her lunch and noticed that sitting nearby was Pablo Picasso. And she flipped out, thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world, just to be in the same room with him. And then slowly she got her intestinal fortitude, otherwise known as guts, together, and took a napkin and a ballpoint pen and went over to Mr. Picasso and said, "Excuse me, Master Picasso, I've admired you all my life. You've been a tremendous inspiration for me. Could you just take this pen and just mark something, anything, on this napkin for me?" And so he went, "Thank you so much, Mr. Picasso. I really appreciate it." And he said, "Well, that will be $75,000. And she said, but it took you a nanosecond to scribble this on this napkin. How could it possibly be worth $75,000? He said, "Well, I've been in this business for an awfully long time, and this particular scribble may have taken no time at all, but it's taken me many years to get here. So that as you think about your value to your clients, you need to recognize that they're buying not only your immediate knowledge, but all the hard work that you've done, all the experience that you've developed over time. And perhaps that will give you some sense of how better to value yourself or how better to explain your value as you work with the people with whom you deal. Now, negotiation is not rocket science. We all do it every single day, and that's actually what The Practical Negotiator, the new book, is about, which it says there's an inner negotiator in every one of us, and the issue is how to find that inner negotiator. Part of the problem is, how do we negotiate? Do we negotiate by email? Do we negotiate by text, face-to-face, by telephone? Is there anybody who prefers to negotiate by text? How about email? What we like about negotiation, what we like about collaborative decision-making, is interacting with other human beings. That's rewarding. We see what's going on in their face. We see what's going on as they move their bodies around. And we learn something. Because the number one thing that we exchange in negotiation, always, every single negotiation in life, well, who'd like to guess? What's always exchanged in negotiation? No hands are going up. Eye contact, well, except when you're negotiating by email, iPhone, or what have you. But it does begin with an I, so you're ahead of the game. Any other guesses before I cheat? Pardon me?
Can you repeat the question? You say what?
What commodity is exchanged in every single negotiation? Okay, you guys are good. That's a very good set of responses. No joke. But the single word is information. You are learning about price. You are learning about the specifications of what you're doing. You're learning how fast delivery can take place. You're learning about how many bodies you can fit into a space. You're learning. And the best way to learn is to ask questions. There's an old expression, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them in that ratio. The other thing is that you have to approach negotiation with a favorable attitude. And I'll explain this in a very simple-minded way. I'm going to make the assumption that everybody in this room brushed their teeth this morning. And it comforts me to think that you might have done so. Is there anybody who, while you were brushing your teeth, looked in the mirror and said, now there's an evil person? When you are negotiating, you know that you're not evil because none of us is evil to ourselves. If we treat other parties as if they're the evil ones, they're the bad guys, first of all, they didn't see them when they were brushing their teeth in the morning. But secondly, when you treat someone with disrespect, you very substantially reduce the likelihood that you're going to come to an agreement that will work. And the definition of negotiation, a successful negotiation, is that it's a process that leads to an agreement each party will willingly fulfill. If someone feels as if they have lost in a negotiation, that they've been taken advantage of, the odds are very high that they're going to try to weasel out of the deal in some way or deliver less than they've promised. And they may not ever want to do business with you again. So you have to remember that treating negotiation as a win-lose proposition is a mistake. Negotiation is not a competitive sport. If somebody wins and somebody loses, no deal. The other side of it, however, is that an old professor of mine came up with the phrase win-win negotiation. And that sort of implies that each party walks away from the negotiation and the jingle in their pockets is about the same. But it's not true. And you know from your own experience that sometimes you negotiate with people and they do get a little bit more than you wish, and sometimes you do. You negotiate with the same people over and over and over again. So the smart move is to view each negotiation as an episode in an ongoing relationship. That way, the overall balance works out to be roughly even. Whereas if you say, I'm never going to see Mark again, I am going to rip him off. What goes around comes around, and it's just not what's going to happen. It's not going to make your reputation any better. And it's certainly going to get Mark, if that were the case, to be kind of bummed out. So it's something you don't want to do. So let's get a little bit serious. What do you want to learn? What kind of information do you need to get when you're negotiating? People negotiate based on, some people say objectives, some people say what they want, some people even talk about needs. But the real word to use, and I hope that everybody can read my terrible handwriting, you are negotiating based on your interests. And your interests are sometimes easily measurable in terms of the product that you want, the service that you want, and you know when it's good, you know when it's not satisfactory. But you need to understand what your interests are before you can even begin to think about the interests of other parties. And given your situations, your interests are very complex because you're dealing with really two different sides and you're in the middle. And I'm saying this in a very general way based on what you said in your questionnaires. I'm sure that there are great variations. So understanding what your interests are may be relatively simple. I want to make as much money as I can. But that's not really a very defensible interest. There's only one person in the world to whom money has an intrinsic value. And his name is Scrooge McDuck. You know, you can picture him swimming in a pool filled with $100 bills. He loves money. But to normal people, money is only a tool for meeting our interests, whether it's a matter of our credibility with our colleagues or our bosses or what have you, or being able to take a vacation, pay for tuition, pay for all of the other things that do cost money. But those are what our interests are, not the cash itself. Figuring out your own interests ahead of time helps you understand, as you go forward with the negotiation, whether the proposal that's on the table is sensible for you or not. What you've got to develop as you think about the interests that you're dealing with are how understanding them lead you to metrics, so that you can measure, not necessarily in terms of how many or how much, quantity, but you can measure whether what is on offer makes sense to you. One of the ways to understand what your interests are is you say, okay, what do I want? And if I achieve that, what will the benefits be to me? And there's a Japanese concept called the 5 whys, W-H-Y. And it's sort of like, the classic American expression, peeling the skin off the onion, where you ask, what's in it for me? And if I achieve that, why is that good? And so that why is that good is the next layer. And you keep asking that of yourself so that you really fundamentally end up, and I'll use that word again because it's really an important word in negotiation, you end up where your gut says it's okay. Because when your gut says it's okay, that is when you can make a decision and be comfortable about it. And you do want to be comfortable with the decisions that you make. You also need to understand the interests of the parties with whom you're negotiating. But there's a very important job you have to remember to do, always. Your job is to pursue your interests. It is not your job, even when you're representing a client, to be the number one advocate for their interests. You want to be the number one advocate for your own interests, and should the client's interests be close to yours, similar to yours, congruent with yours, all well and good. But you need to keep in mind at all times that understanding your own interests is what comes first, because they give you the metrics for determining whether the deal is good. But then you want to understand the interests of other parties, because as you deal with them, the more you show an understanding and appreciation of their interests, the greater the likelihood that they're going to feel enthusiastic about the value that you add to the exchange. When I was a kid, there was some company that advertised in magazines, and it said, "The way to a man's heart is through his stomach." Well, the way to a good agreement with another party with whom you're negotiating is through that party's interests. So if you characterize your proposals, you characterize your answers based on terms that they have used, then you're going to come up with something that appeals to their interests, makes them feel respected, and leads to a greater likelihood of a deal that's going to work. I'm going to go back to the question about metrics for a second, because one of your questions that really struck a chord with me was someone who said, how do I know when a deal is okay? How do I know whether I've left money on the table that I, ought not to have done? And money on the table is a concept, not a specific thing, perhaps. If you've done a good job of figuring out how am I going to judge whether a given proposal meets my interests or meets the interests of my clients or serves the interests, then you have metrics, you have ways of measuring so that you can say yes or you can say no, and you know that the answer is going to be an appropriate one. And if let's say that their deal is slightly more expensive than you wish, but it absolutely delivers the kind of goods and services that you're pursuing, well, maybe you've spent a few extra bucks, but it may well be that you're much surer of being able to deliver something that's going to make you look good as well as make your client smile and be willing to pay you, or whoever is paying you. Sometimes you're getting a commission from one side, sometimes from another. So, again, you need to be aware of that at all times. Who's paying me? It does make a difference. There are some businesses where it's legitimate to get paid by both sides and others where it's not. And I have no idea what the rules are here, but you need to pay attention to that. Where's the money? Where's the reward coming from? So you do want to pay attention. Who am I serving and why? Now, there's another question that came up on more than one of the surveys. How do I cope with someone who is passing the buck? Well, now I have to ask my manager. I can't make a decision. Drives you crazy, doesn't it? So part of what you need to do is do a good job of homework. How do decisions get made in this particular organization? And what can I do about it? Now, one of the side types of person, I'll say, that you find that is more or less a buck passer in that way is the kind of person that I call a filter. So that sometimes there are people who answer the telephone for their business or are the first person that you see when you walk in the door, and it's their job to keep people like you away from their boss. Now, there's several things that you can do, and each time you have to figure out the right way to do it. But if you're dealing with filters, the first thing they are is that they are an obstacle. Stop right here. But then, hopefully, if you ask questions appropriately, you can turn the filter into a mentor. How do decisions get made here? How many people have to sign off so that a deal is really a deal? How long does it take? What are the standards that are used as decisions are made? So you need to use this filter person as someone who can teach you how to go forward. I'd like to come back and talk to you again when I know more or when I've got a better presentation for you. But in order to make a better presentation, I need information from you. I respect you. Respect, respect, respect. Always that respect. I need to hear what you can tell me. And then if you can engage the filter as a mentor, then the next thing you want to do is see whether they can somehow show some degree of enthusiasm for what you're trying to do. And so perhaps what you do, and this is an extraordinarily generous term, you can turn them into a partner. You know, they get sufficiently engaged in what you're coming forward with. And so they say, yeah, you should do it this way. Why don't you try it a little bit, change that part of your proposal in a certain way, whatever it may be. And then, if they get really engaged, you can turn them into an advocate. So that they, with some degree of enthusiasm, say to their boss, you've got to talk to Diane. She may be a weird person, but she's got great ideas. But you want to do that so that otherwise, if you're stopped by the filters, if you're stopped by the people who are standing outside the door, you're dead meat. And so it's really your job to try to find ways to turn them around. You cannot say to a filter, I have to pick on somebody new, you are a fundamentally meaningless person, let me talk to someone who can really do something. That is not going to work. You're not going to win any friends that way. So it's really a matter of, helping the filter understand how important they are to you, how you take them seriously, how you respect them, whatever it may be, in order to turn them from an obstacle to perhaps ultimately an advocate. But you need to know how the decisions are made. You need to know what kinds of things you have to do in a company to sort of trip the switches that will put you inside the door that's being barred, and sort of take it at that to that level if you can. Now, I have no idea how much time I've taken. I want to maximize time for your questions, and so I'm going to do that now. And if not, of course, I can just keep talking indefinitely. But who does have questions? And I can't see everything terribly clearly given the lights, but any questions anybody might have? What do you run across? What's the biggest problem or an annoyance? Yes?
I have a question. So if I'm negotiating a deal with a hotel and I've told them I need your best possible deal, and I feel confident they've given it to me, and then I've gone back to the client and said this is the best deal, and they say if you can get it another $10 lower per room night, I'll sign.
Yeah.
And then I go back to the hotel and I say, sorry, we're not going to be able to do it. It's got to be $10 lower. Oh, we can do it. And then it just makes me feel like I didn't present the client the best possible deal in the first place. So I'm thinking other planners or hoteliers, how you handle that situation, or how I know going in that they're not going to come back and give me a better deal.
Two things I suggest to you. The first is to get a sense from your client what will really make them happy in terms of the room rate. Whether they're, if you can get $75 a night, we'll love you. But if it's $76.50, you're out of here. So you need to you need to ask the questions on that side first, and say, okay, I'm going to go now and talk to the hotel and get the very, very best deal that I possibly can. And even depending upon, what the range is that you're talking about in the room rate, you may say, when they offer $75 a night, say, I think my client might possibly be willing to do it, but I'm probably going to have to struggle with them. What can you do for me? Not, can you do X, Y, or Z? What can you do for me? Open-ended question. And see what might be able to happen. Now, it may not happen, but it may be that if they come at you with a figure that is, roughly in the sweet spot, but not necessarily, you say, look, I'm not convinced that the client will buy in at this level. Are you sure you can't do better? Now, are you sure you can't do better is already, I've used the wrong kind of question, because that gives them a chance to say yes or no. But how can you make it better? How can you improve this? What can you add? Now, it may well be that they can add, 2 pieces of chocolate on every pillow, or, a welcome fruit basket at every room, or whatever it may be. But, you have to think, is it only going to be cash that convinces my client, or will it be other amenities? 2 tubes of toothpaste. Whatever it may be. So you've got to, yourself think, okay, how can I measure whether this is going to work? Going back to metrics. And whether my client's going to be turned on or turned off. You're welcome. Other questions? Yes?
When do you determine that you cannot negotiate any further than you already have, and you stop and you come to an agreement?
Okay, I'm going to go a little bit backwards. There's a part of your body that nobody in this room probably knows that you have. It's called your BATNA. Which stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. So that you need to know before you go into negotiation in a given community what the competition has to offer and where you can go if your prime target shoots you down. Now, it's an interesting concept that your target should shoot you down, but that's something else. So you need to think about that in the first place. What can I do if things really just go the wrong way? And if you have a strong BATNA, if you have another hotel of equal terrificness, all the great, goodies that you want, that's, very likely to want your business, then you can play the game more easily Whereas if it's the only hotel in town or for 27 miles around, it makes life a little different. One of my favorite stories, one of the trainers who worked for me exercised her BATNA in a very interesting way. Her name is Victoria. Her husband's name is, Carlos. And they decided that they wanted to buy a new car for Victoria. And they figured out, they went to all the websites and everything else. And they figured out the best price. They figured out what kind of bells and whistles they wanted on the car, what color it should be, what color the upholstery should be, everything. Where should we buy it? And they live in New Jersey, and there are, 500 million car dealers within 12 feet of their house. They went to the car dealer that had a relationship with their credit union. I don't know if you have credit unions in Florida, but it was, where they were going to borrow the money to buy the car. And they sit down, the salesman takes them into his cubicle. And I can't do this up here without falling over, but, they're sitting across the desk from him, and the salesman only addresses his comments to Carlos. And Carlos is not a dumb guy. And under the table, he is counting on his fingers, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, waiting for Victoria to explode. Because at a certain point, she sort of rises up, waves her arm in front of the salesman's face, and says, "Hello, my name is Victoria. The car is for me. It's my money. And we," and she stands up, "are not going to buy it from you." And she gets up and walks out. And Carlos, of course, got up immediately, too. And she said she was so dismayed, and I'm cleaning up her language somewhat, that she was prepared to pay $5,000 more for the car. Serious money. But they ended up paying $250 more. And so they were both pretty happy. And, of course, the salesman was sitting there with his jaw on the table. So she was exercising her BATNA because she did have choices. So in your situation as you describe it, you're looking at, when you come to a total impasse, there are a couple of possibilities. If you want to make a deal, and let's say that the other folks, whomever they may be, are just, they're bureaucratically, their hands are tied. They've got no imagination, which is sometimes the same thing, by the way. And you may say to them, "Look, at this point, we are not going to make a deal. I'm going to check back with you in 5 days, 3 days, 1 day, whatever it may be, and see whether there's reason for us to restart our conversations." But you're sort of very gently threatening them, "Otherwise, I'm out of here." Now, there's a whole concept, there are people in negotiation, I'm sure none of you has ever run across one, but they're called bullies. The classic characteristic of a bully is that a bully is afraid of failure. So if you say to a bully, I'm afraid we may fail to reach an agreement," you are saying to a bully, your biggest fear is about to be recognized because you're afraid of failure, and I am threatening you with failure. But you're doing it in such a way that you're not saying, you're a no good you-know-what. So you need to use your language based on the kind of things that are being shown. If, for example, a large hotel chain with which you have done business is being profoundly bureaucratic, you can say, "Hey, look, we've been doing business for a very long time. You may have somebody to talk to at corporate or what have you." Say, "What do I do?" There's nothing wrong with asking for advice. But, you've got to just work your way around this. But if the deal's going to die, if you haven't got a reasonably okay BATNA, it may well be that you have to give things that you don't want to give away. Or you may have to accept things that you don't want to accept. And then the question is whether the folks on the other side of your relationship are going to say, you blew it. And that's where you are, sort of between a rock and a hard place. I.e., no easy answer. Other questions? I'm just looking around. Yes. See, this is the only intelligent table here.
I think I'm a pretty good negotiator. I'm a meeting planner. But I have a 27-year-old son who's one of those gifted kind of kids, very alternative. And all my life, negotiating with him is really tough, really tough. So I can figure out Hyatts and convention centers and people and everywhere I go, but I cannot figure out this boy who I love dearly, he's my heart and soul, but he's very, very clever. So do you have any,
Well, one possibility is to, turn on the time machine and bring him back in age so that you have more time to work on him. What my wife and I did with our daughters, who, as the intro said, they continue training us. The first rule we made with our daughters was that neither of them could ask us for anything unless both my wife and I were in the same room. Very simple-minded. The second thing is that we did actively negotiate with them from a very early age so that they got used to the adult interaction. I'm not helping you yet. And I will also tell you that negotiating with a 4-year-old is ridiculous. They live in a parallel universe, and you'll never get there. In fact, my 3-year-old grandson is already there. But clearly, you have to think very hard, what are my interests in negotiating with my son, my 27-year-old son? Are my interests getting him to clean up his room, or are my interests getting, and don't want to go anyplace I shouldn't, are my interests just modifying our relationship? And you think about what is really the more important thing to you. And if the modification of the relationship is really where your head is at, then you've got to focus your negotiation processes always on that and worry less about the substantive outcome of cleaning up the room or washing the dishes or God knows what else. There's so many possible ways that 27-year-olds can be pains. I used to be one too. It's really a matter of sort of stepping back and saying, okay, what's the problem? Because the other thing is, the stronger our feelings about another person, the more likely it is that whatever they say is going to drive us crazy. Is anybody here married? It's like, I sometimes say, I may go to bed with the same woman every night, but the person who wakes up on the other side of the bed the next morning could be somebody completely unexpected. But what she and I say to each other carries far more weight because the relationship is so deep and so strong and so emotionally significant. So that adds to the relevance of how you approach the negotiations with your son. Again, it's not easy, but it's worth pursuit. But think really hard about your own interests first, and maybe his interests as well. Other questions? Looking around the room. I'm seeing none. You know everything you need to know now. Yes. I'm telling you, this is the smartest table.
What would be some tips for when you're doing a negotiation, but the person is negotiating with you and maybe 3 other people, and then coming back and saying, well, this person will do this and this person will do that, and rather than making it a multi-conversation type thing to try and, alleviate that, to try and, make them understand that this is kind of your best deal, or any other tips?
Okay, in some parts of business, that's called a reverse auction. And, what happens is that, people who are putting out requests for proposals will say, okay, everybody's proposed to fulfill our requirements, and we've had an offer at, $20 million. We'd like something for less. It just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. If a party is playing you off against others, you and the other parties are the aggrieved people. And it may well be, you can't go to one of your competitors and say, let's zap this dude. It doesn't work. But you can say, okay, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to listen. I'm going to see what I can learn. But I'm going to simply not respond in the short term, even if I do come in ultimately with a good deal for this buyer. But if they're playing a game and you don't like that game, you ought not to play it. One of the things that, has anybody ever heard of a card game called poker? There are 2 poker lessons that are relevant to negotiation. The first is from the song The Gambler. You have to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. But the other lesson is that when someone says or does something that you find unpleasant, obnoxious, inappropriate, whatever it may be, maybe inappropriate I shouldn't use because it has so many possible meanings. But if someone comes to you with a proposal that just doesn't make any sense, very often the best answer is to sit there with a poker face on. Communicate nothing. Don't look angry. Don't look at them and say, you're pretty dumb. You just respond with silence, emotional silence, visual silence, graphic silence, whatever you want to call it, a poker face. And they're going to think, why aren't they answering me? What did I say? What did I do? And maybe they'll come back and they'll say, I don't understand why you're not answering me. Maybe you didn't hear what I just offered you. And they may, redesign their proposal to you or their offer to you. Or they may even start to back down and say, I really don't want to get this person walking away. So silence is a very, very strong element of good negotiation. And that's why, again, the ears and mouth ratio counts so much. You hear when your mouth is closed. And you also encourage people to behave a little bit more civilizedly, if that term can be used, when you just say to them, nothing. I am clammed up. So, other questions? Yes. No. Well, no, but
go ahead. Coming from the other side, if you were to have a situation where the person who is giving you direction, whether it be your clients, who, for lack of a better term, thinks who they are and expects that they're going to get whatever they want, and you know that this is never going to happen. What they're asking for is absolutely impossible. No one is going to. So you'll go back to that person and you'll say, this is the best I'm going to be able to offer you. And they then say, well, we're this, we're this, we're this, and I'm used to getting A, B, C, D. And you know that they're a small fish in a big pond, and there's just...
Or there
they're
may
not
be a
going to-
big fish in a big pond and still be overreaching.
Exactly.
So that, overreach is possible for people in all kinds of situations. Clearly, your number one job as a professional is to be able to say to your client in that situation, let's get real. I've been doing this for X number of years, and you are indeed someone that these folks would love to have as a client. What kind of added value can you bring them to make it worthwhile for them to overgive what they don't, what they're highly unlikely to overgive? For example, can they say that, can they put your logo on all of their stuff? Can they, do X or Y or Z? How can they take advantage of this? What benefit do you bring them outside of the fact that you're willing to pay in the currency that they want if the deal is reached? Because if it's only your money against somebody else's, what difference does it make to them? So you need to ask the question and see whether, it's just ego talking or whether actually the chief financial officer is saying to the person who's making the purchase, if you don't deliver X, Y, or Z, you're out of here. And then if you find that out, that helps you understand what it may take.
In this situation, it's ego.
Remarkable, isn't it?
It is. It is. And no matter how many times I go back and I tell them...
Is there anybody in this room who doesn't have an ego? I mean, ego drives all of us in our negotiations, and part of the game is to, use ego, focus on ego in such a way that people do feel as if their ego is being served. I see some action over here.
Yes, we have time for one last question.
Okay.
In the interest of time, so we can get you all back to work.
Thank you. So I guess I could say that I've worked on the hotel side with sales, and so I definitely am part of a lot of the negotiation with that. However, for me, I understand that mostly when you negotiate, of course, as you said, you have to have respect for that other person's time as well. And so normally with the respect that you give to them, and as well showing of your own confidence and your own knowledge about their side as well as your side, that normally can bring about, a better ability to negotiate with them. However, then you have the alternatives that you used where you can have kind of like in a way bluff. You could bluff or kind of say, oh, well, let me go back to my client. And even if you don't call your client and you give it a couple hours and then you call them back and say, yeah, that won't do, and then you go back to them and keep negotiating. And so that's great. And then also having the other options with other hotels in the area, things like that, or even saying, well, we're still not decided on a city that we want to be at. We're still looking at hotels that, even if they are the only hotel in that one city,
right,
you can say, well, we're looking at this city as well. But then sometimes you come across somebody who, again, the ego, it's like they don't want to negotiate at all. It's just, this is what we have, this is what we'll give you, and that's it. And it's like there's no more room for negotiation. How would you
A person
that?
who uses their ego that way, saying my way or the highway, is adopting, I go back to this page because it hasn't got as much written on it, and I don't want to waste too much paper. It's taking a positional approach. They're adopting a position, and they're saying, this is it. I ain't going to move. And the interesting thing is that the person who adopts the position is more limited in terms of their possibilities of action than the person who has not adopted a position. So that when Mark and I were little boys on the playground, and I would see him coming, and I'd say, if you cross this line that I've just drawn on the sand, I'm going to knock your block off. And knowing Mark, as all of you might, he immediately crosses over. And so I'd say, well, if you cross this line, I'm really going to knock your block off. And of course, here he goes again. I just don't want to fall off the edge. And I've drawn the line. I have a choice. I can get into a fight with this dude, or I can run like hell. And this is the choice that I've created for myself, which is not at all appealing. So that if people are doing this, they're getting positional and they're hiding behind the position, they're limiting themselves and they lose face if they back down. So you may want to say to someone who's going in that direction, you might want to leave yourself a little bit more flexibility so that you have a chance of making a deal without losing face. So that's a very generic kind of answer, but
So basically call them out on wanting...
Gently, very
Yeah,
gently.
nicely.
You guys are diplomats. And you've got to be diplomatic. And that's what it comes down to. You don't say, if you don't climb down off your high horse, you're dead meat. Doesn't work. But if you say, you're locking yourself into a place where if you do any moving at all, you're going to lose face, you don't want to do that. And that's a private conversation. You don't say that in front of the other side. Then you're doing them a favor. So that's the deal. Question, Diane, are we giving a raffle prize or not? I can't remember.
Yes, we will.
Okay. So I will go and collect a visual of that. And whoever wins this gets a prize, haha, my signature in the book, but anybody can get the signature anyhow afterwards if they pay for it.
Do you want to have any closing statements? Because we can do that with our housekeeping minutes.
Okay. Fine.
Do that now? Throw out a question, the first one gets it. Or we can do it with our motion ticket.
Well, it's your thing. I don't want to tell you how to do it.
You guys are negotiating right now, right?
Yes,
Sam?
exactly.
We are in negotiation. Perfect. Everyone give a great round of applause for Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate it. So we do have some housekeeping notes, and we do have the raffles. So while Mr. Cohen's still here, do you want to, Jerry, do you want to do the raffles?
There's the line tickets.
Oh, very good. And the money's going to Pet Rescue by Judy. Did we see the little puppy outside? If you will, the little doggy dishes that are on the plates, if you've got some loose change or would like to donate some larger dollars, they all goes to Pet Rescue by Judy, which is helping her and her organization. While we're waiting for the raffle, I just want to let you guys know that March 11th will be our after 5. On the website, it did say Winter Park Block Party. That has been changed. We had some conflict with the date with the Winter Park. But March 11th after 5 is chocolate and networking at the World of Chocolate Museum and Cafe. Sounds good? It's on the International Drive, kind of around the SeaWorld area. Also, on your desk, you have been summoned. Did everybody get their summons to report to court? That will be in April. That will be our next event. The chairman of the board for MPI International is going to be our main event, or our judge and jury for you. It'll be a great event. It's all about that negotiations and legal situations for our meeting industry. And that's going to be at the Wyndham Grand Orlando at Bonnet Creek. Very, very nice resort down at Disney. And again, all registered attendees today, you'll be able to see today's session online thanks to our hybrid partner, Sonic Foundry. So with that said, I'm going to ask you once again if you would please fill out the survey. This helps us to better do our programs for you. That's on the tables. Just a short, quick jot of your answers. And with that said, I'll bring up Jerry Bell, who is our VP of Special Projects.
Just for a quick moment, I want to have our representative from Pet Rescue by Judy just give you a few words about their facility, what it's all about, where your money is going towards today for the raffle, and about their, did I say that, new facility?
Yes. Hi, thank you guys. We actually just got our certificate of occupancy today for our new shelter, so it's kind of a big day. They're going to start moving dogs and cats in today and probably for the next 7 days. But we were in hyper fundraising mode for the whole year to get this shelter up and running, so we appreciate everything that you guys have done and continue doing. We plan to have a grand opening celebration on Sunday, March 23rd. So I heard a rumor that you guys were kind of good at planning events and things like that. So anyone that has an inkling to want to help us, we would love to help because we're kind of busy doing all this stuff too, so it's going to be hard to pull off. But as soon as we get everybody moved in, we enter right back into fundraising mode for our spay and neuter clinic. We have a spay and neuter clinic that'll be opening next door, low-cost spay and neuter clinic for the public, and a public education area regarding spay and neuter for animals. So the help doesn't stop right here. You can keep on helping us as long as you want to. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have 3 items that we are raffling off for that benefits Pet Rescue. At the table over there. Yeah, those are mine. Okay. By the way, whenever you register for an event, there's always an option for you to buy raffle tickets beforehand, so you can always do that. The first item that we're going to give away is 2 gift certificates. Each one is worth $25 for FMI Restaurant Group. It's to either the Funky Monkey Wine Company or Bananas. So it's $50. And the winning ticket is, last 3 digits are 132. 132? 132? Dieter! Yay! The next item that we have is a complimentary 2-night stay at the Hampton Inn in Daytona Beach. 2 nights to party on the beach. And the winning ticket, last 3 digits are 089. 089. Yay! Jeffrey Perrin, our past president. Is this it? Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And then our final item, we have a gift basket, a wine gift basket that I think that was donated by, who was that donated by? I think Pet Rescue also. Nope, sorry. Pardon me if I'm saying it wrong. Arcana gift baskets. So it's beautiful. And the winning ticket is 086. Last 3 digits. Oh, Jeffrey.
He must have bought an orange.
So he's going to the beach and he's bringing wine. Okay. And we also want to thank Stephen Cohen for No. That's it. For his presentation today, and he's also donated one of his negotiation skills books. So this will be good for all of us. And the winning ticket, is 129. 129. No, he didn't win. 129. Yay! Maria from Melia Hotels. That's for you. Yep, perfect. Thank you. Congrats, Maria. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you at the next event.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
You're going to do some closing remarks? Already did. Closing? Okay. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great evening.